Hello everyone, this is Ayad Boudiab and we are continuing our Angular course. As we have discussed validation and binding and so on, I'd like to take a branch in here of branch off and talk about some other functionality available through Angular, and after we learn about those functions, then we can continue our main course of talking about the services and so on. So these functions that I'm talking about, these are Angular functions that they come handy as you do in your development. For example, I can use the Angular.forEach. I can use the Angular isArray, isDate, isString, Angular.copy. I can use these functions while I'm developing my Angular application. So let's go ahead and do this, and let's start first by creating an array, and then we can work from there. In this case, by the way, I don't think I would be needing Bootstrap. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And let's start in our script in here. We are referencing Angular, of course, we need to use that. And then I'm going to declare a var result. And right now it's an empty array. And I'm also going to declare another array that contains the grades for students. So let me copy this and display it on the screen. The var grades, it's an array of objects. Every one of those objects represent the name of the student and the grade. The name, grade, and so on. I have 4 students in that array. Now, after being done with this, I'm going to go down here and start working with some of the functionality available to me through Angular. And the way these functions are is that Angular dot, right? So Angular dot for each, Angular dot is array, Angular dot is date. That's how they are structured. So let's start with the first one, and let's see how we can use for each. So Angular dot for each in here takes the actual array or object, and then it has a function with a key value that can read that data from the array and then do something that whatever you want with them. So I'm going to look at the grades array, and then I'm going to apply the function with the value and the key. By the way, if you need to know details about these functions and how they are structured, you just look at the Angular documentation or API documentation that tells you what parameters to expect and so on. And in this case, that's what I did, and I know that for each will take the array that I need. In this case, that's the grades array that you see up there, and then the function with the key and the value. Now, the key would be the key of that specific object, but the value is the object. So after I get the value, I have to use value.name and value.grade to get the data from there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get those elements and push them into the results array. Okay. So going here, I'm going to say this dot results. That'll be the results array dot push. That's how we use that's how we put elements into an array in JavaScript, by doing push. And then I'm going to put a square bracket plus the actual key plus the closing square bracket, and then I'm going to put an arrow pointing in here, and then I'm going to put the rest of the information. So all what I have right now is the actual key of that specific element. Now I need to use the name and the grade for that person or for that student. So the way I do this is by going value.name plus, let's say, column, and then plus value dot grade. So I'm pushing this into the array. This that result that push, and then the key, the name, and the grade. Now, after I'm done with this, I'm going to alert the results. So this is what I have so far, and I'm going to get this on the screen. And now I can see that the JavaScript alert gave me 0, which is the actual key, Mike, grade A, 1, the second key, Tim, grade B, 2, Lisa, grade B, and Brian. So that would be the actual object as you can see it on the screen. Now, let's proceed and see what else we can look at as far as the Angular functions are concerned. One thing I can do, I can alert the Angular dot to JSON, and as the name implies, I'm converting something to JSON, and grades. So I'm taking the grades and displaying those in JSON format. I can also, for example, alert Angular dot to JSON, and I will alert the results that I just got, right? So let's go back to the page, reload, that's the first one, and now here's the elements being displayed in a JSON format. And here's the third one in a JSON format. Okay, so that's easy to work with by using the angular.json. And by the way, there's angular.fromJSON as well, from JSON to JSON. So let's say alert. Let's work with some more functionality. Let's say is grade an array? Let's do this. Is grade an array? And then do plus Angular dot is array grades. Okay, so I'll be able to tell whether this one is an array. Now I can also use isDate functionality to determine if something is a date, and then I can alert that. So let's do this. I declared a date, var my date, and I gave it the array, the string 2014-0205, and then I alert is my date a date, and then I will get angular.isDate my date. Let's see what we get in here. Let's go back. You don't have to copy this. Let's reload the page. That's the first one. We've seen that. We've seen that. Same here. Now, is grade an array? True. The grade is an array. And then is my date a date? It's false. Okay, but I thought it is a date, but what we end up with is a string, and now it's not considered a date. So how we can make that different? How about if we declared the date as a new date object in this case? Okay, let's do this. Var another date equal new date object, and now I have 2014-0205. Is another date a date? Let's do this, and let's reload. Get rid of the first few. Oops, my bad, because I disabled the alert. Let's go back, and let's come back to the actual page, copy the full path, and then, well, I completely disabled the alerts. Let's go ahead and get that going, and I do so by loading another instance of the browser. Copy the path. Now we've seen this, same here. By the way, you see this, prevent this page from creating additional dialogues. If you click on this, the alert will be disabled. So that's what I clicked on before by mistake. Is my date a date? False. Is another date a date? True. So when I create the date object, it will recognize that as a date. Okay. Now, by the way, you can still use things like lowercase, right? I can say something like alert, and then I can say Angular dot lowercase, and then I can say something like this is a test. Well, you guess here what's going to happen, right? It's going to convert that into lowercase. So these are some of the functionality that I can use with Angular. Let's go ahead and talk about another one. And here when I switch over to angular.copy, so I can copy an object to see how we can work with that. Now I'm going to have a form, and that form for the car, and we've seen something like this before in the previous exercise. I'm going to create a car object on the scope. So I'm going to have my car app module, and then I'm going to create a controller called car controller that I'd like to work with. So for now then, I'm going to scroll up here, and in the HTML I'm going to put ng-app equals, and I call this car app. And by the way, I'll refer to that down here when I create my module. So I'm going to copy these guys and show it to you straight on the screen so you don't have to see me typing everything, and we can discuss it, of course. So here it is. I have my car app, angular.module, car app. It does not depend on any other module. Car app.controller. I have the car controller, and I'll refer to that controller shortly up there. For the function, I injected the scope. For the scope, I added a car object with the make, model, and description. And then I created a scope.newCar is empty. So right now, the car is empty, right? The new car. And then I have a function for scope.copy. Now I'll be back to this in a second. Let's go back to our form and see what we can do to fill out the information. Now in the form over here, I have my ng controller equal, and that will be of course the car controller that I declared below. Then I'm going to add the rest of the information, and this will present the make, model, and so on inside that div. So the label would be the make, type is text, ng model is car.model. You see me sometimes typing car.model or car.make or make, either way, because that property could be found inside the car object being declared down here. So car.make, that will represent the make, so it's binding to the make. Car.model, binding to the model. Car description, binding to the description. We've seen this before in the previous exercises, correct? Okay, now I have in here a text area. That would be the car in JSON format. Good, I've seen that as well. There's a button, class button. I also added button primary just to make that as a primary button. That's also another CSS class provided to me through Bootstrap. Okay. By the way, that's not the purpose in here, but just you will see how it's going to display when we load the page. But the key point is that ng-click equal copy car. That's the point. I'm going to copy the car object. The car object being declared here in the scope, I'm going to copy that car object when I click on the button copy. And there's another text area called copied car. That's the second one, and that will be the new car in JSON format. So one would be the car in JSON format, the second one would be the new car in JSON format. The actual ng-click triggers the copy function on the car object. That's why in the scope I have a copy function that takes the car object, and it says scope.newCar equal angular.copy car. That's the purpose of this exercise. It takes an actual object, copies it, and stores it in another. So I get a copy of the car and store it in the new car. I put in here a note to go over the jQuery Lite based on the documentation, but the key point that I'd like to bring to your attention with this one is that jQuery, you know jQuery, you've used jQuery in other applications. We've discussed that on Mr. Bull website. There's another course for it, but using jQuery by the way, Angular refers to jQuery Lite, which is a minified version or small version of jQuery. When I mean minified, means just some of the functionality are trimmed off. They don't exist. So it's a smaller version of jQuery. You can look at jQuery Lite and see the type of functionality that supports. If you're not happy with those functionality, then you can refer to jQuery itself. And that's what I did in here. Right before I referenced Angular, I referenced jQuery -1.9. Okay, so this exists in the scripts folder as well. jQuery is needed here, and I'll show you why. But I reference it, be careful, right before I reference the angular.js. So now that after I copied the car, I'm going to use angular.element. Well, angular.element is the same way we refer to elements from the DOM in jQuery. But this is the Angular version of it. So it says, get that copied car, which is the one up here, by ID, right? And that's why we use the pound. Get that copied car and add the class make it yellow to it. Now where's the class make it yellow? The class make it yellow is the one that style over here that changed the background color to yellow. And this is it here. The class starts with a dot, make it yellow. It sets the background color to yellow for that new car. So then it turns it to yellow, and then alert, car and new car are equal. Are they equal? In this case, I'm asking the angular.equals function to tell me if scope.car and scope.new car are equal. So then what are the three key functions that I'm referring to? Angular.copy, to copy an object. It copied the car into the new car. Angular.element, to reference an element from the DOM. In this case, this is the copied car that you see up here. Why I need to reference it? Because I need to add the CSS class to it, make it yellow, which has been declared up here. The third thing is to determine whether two objects are equal. And I use angular.equals to alert that on the screen. Let's go ahead and save. And now we have the that displayed on the screen here. Let's copy the path and go back. And let's paste it here. And now I see that I have a make, Toyota, because it's bound to that car object, model Corolla. This is a reliable car, and this is the actual object car, right? You see that in here, button primary. You see how the color is blue? That's what it means, button primary, that I was referring to earlier. Right now the new car is empty. I need to click on copy. The copy says, turn it to yellow. It says car and new car are equal, true. By the way, this is not displayed yet because of the alert. I click on the alert, and now you can see that car and new car, they are equal. It sets the background color to yellow like it's supposed to. And now I have a new object. Now this is the Toyota. I can say, for example, Camry. You notice that as I typed Camry in here, the actual one changed down here, right? And I copied over, alert. Now it's Camry, right? And then it tells me, of course, they are equal because it copied this car into the new car object. These are some of the functionality that I can use in Angular. Again, the key ones that I concentrated on is the angular.copy, to copy one object to another. I also talked about angular.element to refer to a specific element, and angular.equals to see if two objects are equal. Be careful when you're talking about some functionality that exists beyond the jQuery Lite provided to you by Angular. You need to download or refer to jQuery in order for the functionality to work properly. So keep that in mind as you're working through this exercise. I know that there's a lot to cover as far as Angular is concerned, so we'll be talking about more and more exercises. We'll review some items as we progress so we can have that knowledge solidified. And let's go ahead and move to the other exercises so we can have a better understanding of Angular. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Ayad Boudiab, and you take care.